Despite the repeated promises by security agencies to end the kidnappings, banditry, and insurgency in the north, there is no sign that the criminality in that section of the country is about to abate anytime soon. Instead, Nigerians are being regaled daily with horrendous acts of violence against children and men whose lives have been completely disrupted by a marauding band of terrorists that the government and its security agencies are unable to or have refused to subdue. In recent weeks, the violent attacks against citizens living in the north have become so harrowing that it has forced many women to cry out to the federal government for help while narrating their gory ordeal in the hands of their captors.
Today, I'm standing not at Zainab Ahmed, not at Binti Jazi that everybody knows. Today, I'm standing as a mother, a sister, a wife, a friend. Today, I lost someone very dear to me, raped by 8 men, killed, video sent to our kids. For crying out loud, what wrong have we done to you? This government, memu kai muku, me yasa ba za ku kawo mana dauki ba? A dauki uwar mutum, ai rapin dinta, masa 8, a kashe ta, a aika wa 'ya'yanta bidiyo. Wani irin zalunci kuke mana a ƙasar nan? Wani irin zalunci kuke mana a ƙasar nan? Ya kuke iya kwanciya ku yi bacci da hakokinmu da yake kanku? Kun yi alkawari za ku kawo mana tsaro. Ku bar mu da yunwa da kuka kawo mana ƙasa. Kullum mutuncin mu ake ci. Kullum tozarci muke gani. Tun ana yi a nesa yana zuwa kusa da mu. Ya ilahi me kuke so mu yi muku? Laifin me arewa ta yi muku? Laifin me arewa suka yi muku? Laifi ne da muka fito muka zaɓe ku. Laifi ne da muka fito muka bi bayan ku. Laifin me muka yi muku? Baba Buhari me muka yi maka?
Right. We took this story yesterday.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, this is so heartbreaking. I don't know how the federal government should respond to this type of situation now. This is the second video we're seeing this week alone.
Respond with action. Respond with action. That's why Section 14 talks about the federal government being sole charge of protecting lives and property. We give our sovereignty to the federal government because we believe they'll be able to create security. We pay our taxes to the federal government because we know that that money will be used to provide our security. We give them everything. So they should use all of that federal might and do the needful and smoke out these terrorists. In a state, the state must always have the autonomy of violence.
Absolutely.
So the federal government should do the needful as regards it. So
I hope it's made an impact.
But now, joining us to discuss the state of insecurity, especially in northern Nigeria, and how security agencies are capitalizing on this to constrict civil spaces, is Victoria Ibezim Ohaeri, Executive Director at Spaces for Change. Recently, Victoria led a team of research for Action Group on Free Civic Spaces to conduct national security and counterterrorism study. The Security Playbook is a joint action study on the rising misuse of digital technology, counterterrorism, and national security laws to restrict civil spaces in Nigeria. Welcome to the program, Victoria, and good morning. Victoria, I read your extensive report.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Very extensive report and well-done report, I should say. And, you know, it just segues into conversations about software like Pegasus that the Israeli government is using to track down people in some other states. And the fact that rather than, you know, channeling this energy to fight insurgency, but it is being used to shrink the civil spaces and monitoring people in the civil space that are advocating that there should be an end to this insurgency. So why is the battle against those in the civil space not those that we should be following?
Well, I think the starting point is to acknowledge that Nigeria is indeed besieged by insecurity, and a lot of the security initiatives, including the counter-terrorism interventions that have been introduced, are absolutely necessary, especially in a climate like Nigeria, ravaged by organized crime, festering insecurity in many parts of the country, including terrorism and banditry and the like. So the concern that we're having is whether the entire apparatus, security apparatus, the resources that have been earmarked for containing the crisis is indeed being used to address the problems, or whether it's being diverted to other sectors that are not posing sufficient threat to national security. So it is the basis of that study that we're now looking at how the security rhetoric has increasingly become a dominant driver of closing civic space in Nigeria. And there are lots of findings, especially the use of digital technologies that have been procured in the name of countering terrorism, protecting national security, how they're increasingly being diverted to restrict the online civic space, restrict the ability of citizens to organize, to assemble, to associate, and speak up freely.
All right. Well, let's dissect the recent trending videos of women from the North lamenting the state of insecurity in the country. Now, do you think these videos have made an impact? Or how would you want the federal government to react to these videos?
Yeah, there are so many ways to respond to the videos. The first is there are root causes of, there are so many reports that have exposed the root causes of insecurity. What is driving young people or older people or different sects of the population to go into organized crime? So it's not just enough to make, develop intervention programs. If women, there's a video of women that have been affected by crisis, you develop like conditional cash transfer programs, give them rice, give them Indomie. Those things are not solving problems. There is need to address the root causes, the drivers of insecurity. There is a lot of poverty in those localities where organized crime is flourishing. What steps have been taken to address the pervasive poverty, illiteracy, and high unemployment in those regions? Those are the first steps that need to be taken to ensure that the people that are vulnerable to criminal activity are occupied with other productive activities, academic ventures that keep them away from crime. So it's not just enough to respond to the women. It's not just enough to issue press statements commiserating with the women. It's not just enough for the government to say, we assure you, we will look into I will set up committees, we will do this or we will do that. Promises are not enough. People now need concrete action, concrete verifiable action on the ground that will really help to keep insecurity at bay.
Okay, in the interim, while we wait for government to deal with this situation decisively, but we still have to find a way to bring succor to these women, girls who have been affected. And what do you think at the level of the civil society can also be done to bring succor to ameliorate the situation of women who have experienced this kind of dastardly acts?
Yes, they need, first of all, they need a safe space to heal. They need shelter. They need to be, those that need psychosocial support, those that need mental support, mental wellness support, psychological healing. So they need to be taken to safe spaces where they can heal. In addition to that, the legal system needs to be activated to ensure accountability for the perpetrators of these dastardly acts. It's not just enough to set up committees that will look into the atrocities. You need to also take steps to hold the perpetrators accountable. So the legal system has not done enough. We have not established cases of actual culprits that have been arrested, apprehended, tried, prosecuted in an atmosphere where accountability lags, then it emboldens perpetrators to continue to carry out those type of violent behaviors that make those women vulnerable to those conditions. So we need to take those women out of those spaces. We need to make sure that the legal system is effective to deter and sufficiently punish crime.
All right. Great one you have talked about, but let me go back to your report. Your report was talking specifically how, people in the civil society space, their WhatsApp contacts were infiltrated, their social media contacts were infiltrated. I mean, tell me more about this. There's some interesting stuff I've seen in the report.
So what we found is that since 2010, there has been a marked increase in the influx of surveillance technologies in the country. And there are three primary reasons for the influx of those technologies. The first we find is for political and partisan considerations. The second is to curb insecurity and terrorism. And the third is it has really become another conduit pipe for corruption. So on the first part is that a lot of political actors, especially in the run-up to elections, are interested in what their political opponents are doing. So they use some of these technologies to spy on them, spy on their family members, their aides, to weaken their political base, essentially. And this started with a number of state governments in the South in 2010, essentially. And over time, that tradition spread across different state governments, and many of them are using insecurity as an excuse for importing these massive technologies into the country. And second reason is indeed to curb terrorism. We have noticed humongous budgetary allocations to monitoring and tracking communications, intercepting communications. And all these are being done in the name of countering terrorism. Between 2011 and 2021, over 104 billion have been set aside. And there was even an extra budget, supplementary budget, to top up the 104 billion to encourage national security, enable national security agencies to intercept private communications in the name of curbing insecurity. So the third aspect is we found evidence of political cronies, politicians setting up special purpose vehicles and private companies that are using to secure these cybersecurity contracts. And most of those contracts have been to attack online media platforms that are sympathetic to the opposition parties. So these are some of the three major reasons. So which ways have the governments really been able? They couldn't have been able to do this without the cooperation of a lot of private companies, especially the tech corporations, the mobile telecommunication companies, the internet service providers, the content moderation platforms. Different private companies are aiding facilitating these massive privacy breaches using digital surveillance technologies. And how are they doing that? How are the private companies facilitating this? They're using, doing that, achieving those objectives by means of internet shutdowns, by distributed denial of service, by IP blocking, by use of a lot of technical protocols, by pulling down people's posts on social media, and including surrendering subscriber information to relevant authorities upon a written request. And there are so many laws that also provide legal impetus for companies to surrender this data to security agencies. So that actually means that it is not just profit that is at the root of companies facilitating massive data breaches. They also do it because of regulatory compulsion. We have also seen evidence of massive compulsory digital identification programs. And what those programs have done is to, on one hand, make it easy to record, store people's unique features, biological features and biometric information on centralized databases that government has easy access to. So it makes it easy to track, identify anybody, track anybody down, and these are raising a lot of human rights concerns for the civil society.
You know, recently the federal government named sponsors of terrorism. I believe some Islamic group. You know, we all know that persecution is certainly the logical step. Shouldn't it have been the first step, though? What does naming terrorists without concurrent persecution achieve?
That is one of the concerns of this report, is that the tools and technologies that have been set aside or procured in the name of countering terrorism are not actually being used to counter terrorism. If the persons have been named, the next expectation from the public is apprehension of the named persons or visiting the repercussions of that terrorist labeling on those persons. Instead, we have seen the repercussions visited on persons that pose even much less threats to national security. So, just like you rightly stated, a lot of the named persons, they are walking about freely. There is no prosecution going on. We have not heard of any active cases. We have not heard of any active convictions. We have not heard of even any flight bans or accounts being frozen, properties being confiscated, criminal process of crime being withheld or forfeited to the government. And those people are moving about freely. And that is why we're issuing this report to call on the government to ensure that the technologies or whatever infrastructure that have been acquired to counter terrorism should be used specifically for that purpose. It should not be diverted to other purposes that are totally unrelated to countering terrorism and curbing insecurity.
Okay, your expose, the expose in this your report about the use of this counter-terrorism equipment to hound members of the civil society organizations and other Nigerians is quite damning, because perhaps those who are selling this equipment to us as a country may also want to take another look at what they are selling to Nigerians. But my question is, this equipment, because the bandits who have terrorized major parts of the south, northwest, they use simple communication gadgets, telephone, to call all kinds of people they have in their custody. Yet we have invested so much in this counter-terrorism equipment, and these people are not being tracked down. Is it a question of that this equipment don't have the kind of reach, or just you think it's a case of security agencies just looking the other way and using this equipment for a purpose they ought not to use it for?
I think the security agencies are in a better position to answer that question, because if these technologies, if the massive budgetary allocations and equipment that have been so far acquired are being used, it should have translated to enormous amounts of prosecutions, convictions, punishment, and deterrent behavior, because the investment is not commensurate with the outcomes. That was one of the reasons that propelled this inquiry, for us to understand what if this level of investment has been made, what exactly is hindering the results from manifesting. And we are very concerned that the results are not showing, because the infrastructure that we have acquired, invested so heavily on, are not necessary. Evidence does not show that they are being used for the purposes for which they are procured for. Another evidence that we have is we find increasing number of persons arrested every day and being charged almost every day. Every week we track an incident of somebody being charged for terrorism. And the people being charged for terrorism are usually the terrorism charges are usually based on Facebook commentary, Twitter commentary, journalists going about their normal investigative duties. Those are the people criticizing politicians, either on social media or organizing small rallies in their various states. Those are the people that are being hounded and charged for terrorism. Self-determination agitations across the country, their leaders are currently being hounded, and many of them are currently in prison facing terrorism charges. And all these are much less threats to national security, to the bigger questions of armed banditry, Boko Haram terrorism, and different kinds of organized crime we're seeing in many parts of the country, especially in northern Nigeria. So the question we're asking is, why has there been an excessive focus on smaller crimes that the criminal justice system should ordinarily respond to? Why is the counterterrorism architecture being deployed towards minor misdemeanors instead of heavy crimes that these investments were originally intended for?
So, two things. Is it that we're fast becoming a police state? One. Two, how safe is my data? Because there's been a lot of drive to collect data, which a lot of people think is great for inclusion. But with what all of this you're saying now to me, that a government agency can just ask for my data from a data bank somewhere, and I have not been asked before that data is given based on privacy laws, then my data is not safe. So that's what it means. So what's going to happen?
Yes, that is why the findings are concerning for us and for all Nigerians, because Section 37 of the Nigerian Constitution guarantees the right to privacy. And that privacy extends to your telephone communication, your telegraphic communications, and all of your private business. But at the same time, we still have laws that confer enormous amount of powers on security agencies to invade and intrude on personal privacies in the interest of national security, for public safety, interest of national defense, a lot of other grounds. And emergency responses, disaster management, there are lots of circumstances that are listed in quite a number of laws. And some of those laws include the cybercrimes legislations. We have the Terrorism Prevention Act. We have the Nigerian Communication Act. We have the Official Secret Act. We have the lawful interception of regulations, I think 2019. So many of them conferring enormous discretion on state agencies to intrude on personal privacies, intercept personal communications in the name of countering terrorism. So the question for us is whether Section 37, to what extent is Section 37 of the 1999 Constitution meaningful for Nigerian citizens? If at the same time security agencies have so much access to these centralized databases and to people's digital information. And secondly, it's important to note that, I think I mentioned that before, is that there is an obligation on telecom companies, on internet service providers, on network facilities, on quite a number of groups, even content moderation platforms and tech corporations, to surrender people's subscriber information, subscriber records, subscriber identity, and most of your personal details to certain levels of security agencies upon request. So that means there is a need to strike a balance between our privacy laws and the ability of states to interfere with private communication.
All right. Nigeria's Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, has consistently stated that the security situation in Nigeria has improved greatly since President Muhammadu Buhari's administration took over, about 6 years ago. Now, the minister reiterated this opinion just yesterday. Do you agree with him? Are his assertions backed by facts?
I don't have to personally agree with him. In law, there's what we call rep ipsa loquitur, which means the facts speak for themselves. The facts on ground today glaringly speak to the veracity of his claim. Just yesterday, there were protests in many parts of the country, especially in the federal capital. The North is bleeding. Before the North is bleeding spilled over to the streets, there were several days in the last week were spent on heavily Nigerians were on social media complaining about the daily killings, daily massacres of citizens in northern part of the country. And if the daily massacres represent peace, then it becomes, very, very disturbing. It means that the minister needs to have a deep introspection into the security climate in the country and be able to come up with clearer and more truthful expressions of the state of security in the country.
All right, thank you so much for the work you do and this interesting report. Thank you so much for your time once again.